Hello, everybody. Welcome to Geeksvana. I hope you're all extremely well this evening. It's been an interesting couple of weeks, shall we say. Been very, very busy. Thank you for enjoying and engaging with all of the content we've been putting out recently. I really do appreciate it. As I say, it's been a really busy couple of weeks on and off air, including the release of the National Police Chiefs Council drone Q&A. And I want to thank Mike Paterson for engaging and answering the questions that we've put forward. It isn't always the easiest thing to come on air and provide any group with straight answers based on the legislation to any kind of controversial questions. The full-length Q&A will be released shortly over the weekend, actually. There's a few other sections and questions in there surrounding FPV, informing the police of your flight, that type of thing, a bit more interaction stuff there. So keep an eye out for that. But we've obviously released the highlights as clips, essentially, as you've seen already. So tonight, we're going to take a look at the answers gained, the reaction from our audience and community, and actually point out some of the issues that I feel need addressing somehow in the future, mainly in terms of the whole relationship side of things, which obviously that is so much of life, isn't it? It's important to remember what this series actually was, of course. It is a Q&A. So the police are here helping and answering questions put forward by the Geeksvana community. This has not been a proactive campaign where they're coming out, to trying to harass the drone flyers in the UK or anything else like that. It really is just a rare thing that a responsible body, the body responsible for something like drone enforcement, etc., is actually willing to come out and talk openly. We'll be having more Q&As in the future, so I'll let you know if you've got any other questions. Do let us know. You can email me, sean@geeksvana.com, etc. And we'll also publicise well in advance of the next one, which won't be that far away, actually, with the new way that we're recording them, so that you can have your questions put forward for those. I'm looking forward to seeing how those questions evolve over time and once we start to get on beyond some of them. Now, you also saw the little teaser that was played just before we started the show. That is basically, we have a huge, there's the only, I thought, so many different ways of discussing it, and huge announcement is the only way of describing it. It is probably the biggest announcement on the channel that we will have made about the channel and about Geeksvana, etc., related to us, that I've made in my 4 or 5 years that I've been on air. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. You're going to see things like that. We're going to play that code out again at the end of the show. And if you email that code, just email it with the code. You can put whatever you want in the email, doesn't matter, to email@geeksvana.com, and you'll be entered into a prize draw, which will happen on the night when we'll be live streaming to make the announcement. But I really cannot wait to share it all with you, and it's going to be an amazing journey, not just for us involved in the channel, myself and Graham and John and Will and others, but it's going to be amazing for you guys as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to add a lot of value, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to stop talking about it before I let anything slip. So okay, let's bring in our co-host for the evening and channel editor Graham Degg to have a chat about this topic. Now, we were talking just before, we have our little technical tests and everything that we do just before the show starts. And we were trying to work out why it's always or sometimes a problem to get Graham's white balance sorted. And did we ever work that out, Graham? Why it could possibly be a problem?
Don't know why that would be a problem.
Oh, can we have one more look at that, please? Come on, one more look. Yeah, I want another look. It's pretty incredible. Now, that's putting me in the holiday mood. I am going away for a few days for both business and pleasure onto the continent straight after the show. But it has to be said, that is one of the finest shirts that we have seen on the show so far.
You won't find louder. And Sean, can I just pick up on a point from
Please.
the prize draw? I take it if I send you emails, you're just going to delete them, aren't you?
Yes. I should probably have put that somewhere. The terms and conditions are Graham, John, Hoopy, Will, Devereaux, Linnea, Langhammer. Yes, anyone connected with the channel cannot enter. But you should already know that, really. So yes, yeah. So this has been a really interesting topic to watch on the channel. Not only because we've been releasing multiple videos a day at some points, which is very new for us, but it's been interesting to see the flow of information. This is enforcement with drones. Although there's answers in there that I don't like, and there's a lot of answers that a lot of people don't like it, but we are getting answers based on the legislation from the police about the enforcement of the drone rules, which you try and get that anywhere else in our part of aviation at the moment, and the information's just not there, is it?
No, and it can never be a bad thing to talk with the authorities and try to understand how they work, where their interests are, and how that's going to impact the community.
Yes, exactly. So I'm just actually moving my light slightly because someone quite rightly just pointed out that I'm very dark compared to my.
No,
There you go. I've made myself a little bit brighter. Yes, my setup was a little bit like. Thank you, Argos Danny, for pointing that out. You see, they call Argos Danny some kind of come
they
lately,
clueless.
Yeah, some come lately clueless guy flying his drone, but he's still he's still one of our number one fans that's there to help us sort it out. So because I've been packing, and obviously you can see all the boxes and bags packed behind, the setup took a little bit longer today, but there we go. But yes, but it is good. And, it's always, there's a difficulty in terms of giving people the information that they're not always going to be happy with. I mean, that's obviously something, isn't it, that's going to be tough to put across. But one thing I have respected about this Q&A is they've stuck to the legislation and they've given the answer. So whether or not police officers themselves would agree with anything or not agree with anything, things like there is nothing in the legislation stating the officer has to explain to you why they have a suspicion, what their suspicion is for you to land. At no point in that conversation do they have to tell you that. Now, again, we've talked about attitudes and two-way relationship and conversational flow, etc. You're probably going to, and again, they're probably going to come onto that to actually speak to you. But the fact that they don't have to tell you, I think is interesting, isn't it, in itself?
It is, and we'll come on to it later. I've got a couple of comments on that one, but
very nice.
But I think on the sort of flow of information, I think the great thing about this is it's two-way, because the police get to read the comments that come back. We're having the live show so they can feedback on this, and I know at least one head of one of the drone teams, the police drone teams, who listens into Geeksvana as a podcast so that he can not necessarily keep up to date with the legislation, but keep up to date with the legislation. and certainly he'll sort of hear this and hear the reaction to it.
Yeah.
And that's got to help. It's a two-way thing, and I think that's a brilliant way of getting the feedback in both directions.
It is, and I have to say, it's really, thank you, Lindsay Hayes. It's really it is a change for. Bear in mind the police came and approached us as a channel and wanted to speak to us and wanted to get information out to the drone community, and that's a really big difference in terms of how we're treated by other stakeholders, shall we say. I'm not picking on the CAA, but I am picking on the CAA. But in terms of free-flowing information and seeing this level, the drone community that watch YouTube and that type of thing, yes, it's all very well and good to put press releases out to national media, etc. That does get information out. But actually engaging with people and finding out, how do they feel about what we've said? How do they feel about what's going on? It's a marked difference, isn't it, from just a PR, basically.
And one way information flow is so yesterday, isn't it? We can do this. We can have this two-way flow, and we can do it in a gentlemanly, yes. And no, I'm not going to say gentlemanly, a civilized manner.
Civilized, yes. Civilized, yes, indeed.
Manner.
Well done.
Doing this very civilized way.
Yes, and it has had an impact. The conversations are genuinely being listened to. I have seen changes happen within the short amount of time that I've been collaborating with the National Police Chiefs Council drone team, and it's something that I think is unique, and I think it's good, and I think we need to continue it. So we started off with confirmation of when the police can require you to provide information, and now this actually came up from one of the first Q&As that we did, and it cleared up a question in terms of legislation, in terms of demanding details for a sub 250 gram drone, so no flyer ID, when the pilot does not hold the operator ID. So you're basically flying your mate's drone or a company drone, I suppose, technically, that type of thing, but you are not the owner of the drone, or well, no, okay, you do not hold the operator ID.
You're not the UAS operator.
Let's not talk about who owns and exactly. And actually, what we found out is that there is no specific legislation that that forces you in the way that you do when you have a flyer ID, etc., to actually put your details across. And so, again, that was an interesting question that came up from the last Q&As, and it shows to me that they're not avoiding one way but giving the other, if that makes sense. They're willing to give the information that not helps people, but it isn't a one-way street from that point of view, because it's interesting, and I wonder if that's part of the flyer ID thing on the sub 250. Seems to be something that was almost they now regret with the success of the sub 250-gram drones, shall we say? And I don't say, when I say they, I don't mean just the police. I mean the authorities worldwide, really. And the fact that the CAA, in their recent consultation on the open category, talked about having a flyer ID for sub 250 if it has a camera, so the same as if you need an operator ID. I don't think it's too much of a surprise, is it, really?
No, not at all. And of course, although the flyer, I mean, to be honest, the flyer themselves doesn't have an awful lot to say. If it's sub 250, it's kind of right. Okay, let's quiz you on the manual and see if you've read it, because that's all you're going to have. But there are requirements on the operator, and of course they will have that operator ID number, and I think they can require the flyer to give sufficient information to confirm the operator.
Then
they can have the conversation with the operator, and the operator, I think, then falls into having to talk about who the flyer is.
Potentially, it depends on quite a few different things. But in terms of the absolute question of, I'm stood there, got a sub 250-gram drone. I'm not an operator ID holder. I do not have to give my personal details. Now, there can be lots of other legislation in terms of, the rest of the law where you will have to identify yourself to the officer. And of course, they'll explain that to you. But in terms of straight legislation, these police powers, under the Unmanned Traffic Act 2021. That is the thing, which is linked in the description if anybody wants to go down and read those powers. That's the thing, basically. Next up from that, we took another look at a chunky bit of legislation, which really sounds very scary, and it has some very, very specific drone stuff in there. And that was the National Security Act. And that sounds really serious, doesn't it? But although, as you might expect, it's not specifically drone legislation as such, it's not what the whole thing is actually for, it does take a firm aim at drone users and creates a number of new no-fly zones. The confusion this kind of legislation brings clearly needs more clarity, which should come in the future with things like some of the no-fly zones appearing on Drone Assist and that type of thing. But the big question is, that seems to have come up time and time again, is actually what if a site lies about their status? So just to give a very, very quick update on it, essentially, under the National Security Act, you can apply to be a prohibited place. So it can be obvious things like perhaps regional police headquarters that have anti-terror units there and all sorts of other units and different things, or other vulnerabilities. It can, of course, be things like, MI5 buildings and GCHQs and, whatever, intelligence buildings and military bases, etc. But it can also be a factory that is producing spoons, but they also produce a little grommet that goes in a missile somewhere or something. So that can actually have the protection of being a prohibited place. Technically, a car can be a prohibited place under the National Security Act now in the UK. And it only takes a Secretary of State, not a particular one. So there's also the guidelines being drawn up on how it's actually decided who gets what from that point of view. But it means that you certainly cannot fly your drone over that. And in fact, you shouldn't actually technically be flying your drone towards it in a way that maybe may conflict the interests of the UK, or maybe taking surveillance of it. Now, because obviously they're not going to make a map of all of the secret places in the UK, sometimes the only time you're going to find out about this is a tap on the shoulder, basically. And that's where the biggest question on this one came up, from the point of view of what if a site lies about their status. Now, I know, and I've had I've actually had an experience previously where I was shown a special badge type thing, which I was then able to verify in terms of an area that I was operating in. It wasn't to do with the drone flight, actually, it was something else, press related. And I do wonder if that kind of thing might be transferred across and used on this side of things. But it is one of those things, isn't it? It's a difficult question to answer, because it's, what if someone breaks any law? People are breaking the law all the time in all sorts of different ways. It's a difficult one.
I mean, I look at this one as being that there are some obvious places, and I think those obvious places will be marked out on the AIP, and they'll end up on Drone Assist. Don't have a problem with that. You'll know they're there. No reason to avoid them. There will be other places, because I think we've talked in the past about safe houses. So if you're doing an estate agent job and trying to get a picture of a house, and you're 3 doors away hovering over what turns out to be a safe house, then you'll get a tap on the shoulder, I suspect. But I suspect that won't be from a guy in a G4 uniform. That will be probably somebody plain clothes, but they'll be able to tell you who they are and explain the situation. And if you've got lots of pictures looking down rather than across it, and number 14 Acacia Avenue, you might find yourself in a little bit of trouble. This is a national security act. This isn't just a casual thing.
No, that's right.
Similarly with the cars, if you are hovering over a specific car and following it down a street in a city, and that has been designated by the Secretary of State, you'll have to be pretty unlucky to have chosen the wrong car, won't you?
Yeah, and for a lot of these things, they're only going to act for nefarious reasons. Sorry, somebody just said that the email, it's email@geeksvana.com. They said it wasn't working. I've just sent a tested ears, and in fact, I've got a few other entries. So thank you guys for jumping on that have come in. So that should work. In fact, there's a vacation setting on it, which I've just turned off, so you won't get annoying emails back all the time. Sean's on vacation. We'll come back to you in the next 48 hours. So I've taken that off. Because in fact, I've just got it back to my main account that I've tested it from. So yes, it is working. And a lot of the time you're going to find out about the National Security Act in terms of your drone is going to be a tap on the shoulder. And you genuinely don't have much in terms of prosecution, etc., to be concerned about, because it's genuinely, it's not you that they want. This is very serious legislation that kind of it allows them to deal with the very, very serious nefarious side of things. I believe there's actually already been arrests, not necessarily to do with drones, but under the NSA. In terms of sensitive sites. So I think that actually the fact that it's there and the fact that it's being used is interesting. I think when those court cases come through, we'll see if it's the kind of people that we really do want to stop acting nefariously.
We always say, if you're going to sneak up on something and do anything nefarious, don't do it with a drone. They're far too loud.
Far too obvious,
The specific concern people have about security guards saying, "Oh, I know, we'll just tell people that our factory is covered under this." If they do that and you really think they're not, then report them to the police, because the police really don't like that sort of authority being taken on by people without that authority.
If people abuse it, it will be very bad for their company, whether it's the security company doing it or the landowner doing it, etc. It's a difficult one. Thanks for pointing out, DJI Dronescape. If it wasn't working, it would have been a real problem. Yeah, enter this and get a prize. We come to the prize draw. There's no Graham's won. we were wrong.
It was another account.
Yes, Graham has actually won. So Lindsay Hayes, one of our regulars. Hi, Lindsay. Good to see you. My problem with the NFZs and NOTAMs reveal all the places of interest. I only have to look at NOTAMs to find out when HRH the King is flying. Yeah, I mean, there is. You have to remember that there are multiple levels to any of these security matters, and obviously not something we're going to chat about too much on a YouTube channel, but there is so many more levels going on than you could ever possibly imagine. I mean, the things I find out are only the very, very top layer stuff. Goodness knows the stuff that's been going on below. Some of the things as a journalist I found out that happens in terms of investigation and protections and things around the riots has absolutely blown me away in terms of police and intelligence service capabilities. So yes, the stuff that's NOTAM, the stuff that NFZs, that's for a specific reason. There's lots of other stuff happening that, of course, we don't find out about. And that's the stuff that you're going to find out about if you get a tap on the shoulder. There are things that have happened, and perhaps we'll have an NSA full deep dive one day, but there are issues and crimes that have occurred that will specifically stop. And it's the kind of stuff that if we talked about, you would want to stop, basically, in my opinion. So Dan the Drone Man, another one of our regulars, good to see you. If it's not a highlighted zone, then it could be a site of national security. So you're probably making a genuine mistake and someone will come and shuffle you on your way politely. 110%. Yes. Yep. Dan the Drone Man, 110%. Yes.
That's what I expect.
That's exactly that's the only way I expect people to find out about it. It sounds a lot more serious and full on when a police officer on a Q&A says that, and he's trying to give you the absolute accurate, the one truth based on legislation. So, the police, I have learned in my time collaborating with them, do not have the luxury of telling a story and, meandering along a story like I do. Sometimes I will ask a question, actually, and I've meandered so much they can't answer it whenever I'm chatting, because they're like, well,
No,
you said possibly and not require, so now it's a different question. It's like, okay. So yes, it is sound a bit more scary, but honestly, you're going to find that. UK Bubblers, I just came back from Somerset on holiday and took my Mini 4, but there was loads of idiots there with drones, more than I've ever seen, and seeing their behaviour, I reckon drones will get banned soon. Yeah, I don't know. That's a chat. We've actually got some other shows coming up regarding this type of thing that me and Graham are working on behind the scenes. And I think it might actually go the other way. I think the assessment of risk of very, very small drones is changing and has to change. Basically, in my opinion. Mike Jones, hi, good to see you. I think the biggest issue facing sub 250 is the relationship between drone pilots and the police. Some coppers are awesome, whilst others will just say, get down and move on. And that's exactly what we're going to come on to in terms of, and the thumbnail of this evening. Yeah, indeed, in terms of that type of thing. So yes. So these kind of things, they're useful to get that sort of direct information from people and that type of thing. It's important. So the next one, let me come up to the bit of my thing here, deals with a scenario where I feel advice is almost impossible. And that's exactly what Mike Jones is just talking about. It was useful to hear what options are available and how an officer would recommend handling in terms of if a police officer is approaching you and doesn't know the drone rules or this type of thing, etc. But so much here is down to the people involved, the situation and the actual result, isn't it, really? And we've both had experiences of this, Graham, of different types of police officers that we've dealt with out flying our drone that have very different approaches, shall we say?
Absolutely. And the difference, it's the difference between an approach with, do you have authorization to fly here?
Yes.
Compared with, you aren't authorized to fly here. And I had both of those over 2 days when I was working up at the Epsom Derby. And the first one, fortunately, do you have authorization to fly here? That was the nice one, because the guy had big guns.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about his muscles. So it's a very,
it did actually sound like you were saying that, yeah.
Sorry. Very tight, restricted place with a sort of temporary helipad next to it. So potentially it was really dangerous to be flying drones there, or suspicious. But I had both approaches. And to be fair, my response was tempered depending on the approach to me. I mean, fair enough, I'll always be polite to people carrying guns, but I was far more polite because they would, do you have authorization to fly here? The guys who came and said you aren't authorized to fly here, I was a little bit lippy back, but always civilized, because we're all people. They're doing their job. They just approached it slightly differently and not in a way I would have liked. But there you go.
Now,
but on none of the three approaches was I asked to land the drone.
Indeed, yeah.
Keep it in the air as long as I could.
Because again, the whole thing as well of the requirements to land a drone with suspicion, all they've got to do is hang around and wait for you to land it, and then they've kind of got a lot more powers over you again as soon as the drone's down. Yeah.
Your battery's not going to last forever, is it?
No, that's right. So, I suppose you could have that little game of, do you know what? If you haven't got suspicion, I'm staying in the air, and just stay up there until the absolute 4%. And with some drones, if it's a 3 Pro or something, you could be up there quite a while. The police officer just has to hope he hasn't approached someone with a tethered drone.
or a plus battery.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so Craig White sent this link in to me of an issue he had when he was out flying his drone. And it's an interesting one because it's a really interesting interaction. Now, this is at Stonehenge and summer solstice. And I believe there was actually a TFR blocking the area, because I do know somebody else of a professional nature that was this. And as you can see, the audio to the video is playing as well.
Can you land your drone? You cannot fly.
No, just here, always here, always. I've just been on this side.
So there's been a drone that's been flying overhead.
Basically, here the officer's explained there's been a drone flying overhead. He's saying actually that's not my drone and that type of thing. And he looks at the footage, Now, the officer, a couple of times I'm not going to play the interaction. I'll link to it in the description after the show. But the officer does actually state to him that he doesn't know the drone rules, which is an interesting one, wasn't it, Graham? And he then basically has him land it, taking lots of notes. He does verify and report back to his control center. Obviously, when there's something like a TFR up, they'll always have a drone expert on hand. He was actually asked him there to rewind the footage. He did confirm it wasn't him flying over. It's interesting here, they've got the camera recording the evidence gatherer, recording the interaction. I thought that was quite interesting. Now, again, something I want to stress is this isn't happening everywhere. He's not stood, he is stood within a temporary flight restriction, and you can see the crowd of people behind that he's not flying over. Normally, if there was no flight restriction, he'd be absolutely fine here. Now, he did end up having his drone confiscated, and he got his receipts for and that type of thing. And I have to say his reaction was quite...
He was so chill.
He was about the most chilled person to have a drone seized that could possibly happen. I mean, it is just a drone at the end of the day. He's obviously, I love that he left this in because it's his gutted reaction. You would be gutted if someone come and took your drone like that.
And if you're watching, Craig, I take my hat off to you, sir. Yeah,
really, really good way of responding to it. He didn't, for whatever reason, didn't realise he was in the flight restriction zone. And don't be Craig, because you should be checking your flight restriction zones before you fly. But yes, it's something which is. It's an interesting one to watch because, again, within the TFRs, they're ready to go. Where there's an issue, where they're actually openly policing, I suppose, openly enforcing, but they're not. They're such. And every video that we do with these guys, they're at such a stress to state that they have higher priorities. The drone side of things, catching people flying drones, is not on their is not on the priority list, shall we say? Basically,
no. But where there are events now, more and more you will see TFRs because it makes it easier for them to manage the airspace and to know that if there's a drone in the air and they don't recognise it, then they should approach and find out what's going on. And, it's one of those things. Drones and big events with crowds aren't necessarily the best mixture. I don't think Craig was doing anything wrong. I think he was flying away from the crowd.
The big thing, obviously, was the TFR, I suppose, obviously. But,
it's the TFR in place. Yeah. So that you will see more and more of these just for a couple of days while there's an event on.
People are talking about buffering. If you refresh, we're getting absolutely nothing. This end, we haven't even dropped a single frame, which anybody that knows anything about streaming, that's not bad. And we've got perfect stats here. The YouTube servers have had a few problems recently. So it might be that we're not the biggest channel in the world. We don't get the priority. So perhaps someone really big with 10 million subscribers has just started live streaming and they've moved some of the mice from my wheel across to their wheel. But if you hit refresh, sometimes turning down the Sean needs to turn off his anime torrents. Yeah, thanks, Dan. That would be hilarious, wouldn't it? Sometimes if you turn it down to 720p, that can make it stream better as well. I mean, I look better in 1080p.
I look better than
we
can just have this as a test card for 5 minutes while it sorts itself out.
There goes the monetization.
I wonder if I can get a test card T-shirt. Test card T-shirt with the little girl and the balloon clown.
Yes. Do you know what? Off topic, I'm rewatching Ashes to Ashes at the moment, so she's a little bit of a horror thing for me at the moment. That was so clever, wasn't it? That use, but anyway. But yes. So our fourth clip from the Q&A dealt with the issue of being required to land your drone. Now, most people already know from our previous Q&As and videos that a police officer requires reasonable suspicion of an offence to demand or require you to land mid-flight. However, the video highlighted the issue that the police are not required to explain that suspicion. It's an interesting hole in the legislation. Again, not shooting the messenger. Mike Paterson came along and explained it, and he was actually in the legislation. There is no obligation, so it's down to the police officer if they do or not. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's one of those things where, as a hobby in an industry, there aren't many other hobbies or low-level industries in terms of the low-level tech, in terms of the rest of aviation, that are so scrutinized. And I think it is obviously because we share the airspace and therefore we are airspace users, that we're under all of these rules, etc. It's the same for manned aviation and everything else like that. It just doesn't feel like it should be when we're flying sub 250 gram, very, very light drones, or even sub 150 gram drones soon.
And to be fair, this is the part of the legend. I mean, I am so law-abiding, it's untrue. I am utterly dull in that respect. But I'm really uneasy. I'm not uneasy about the ability to request the drone to land without telling somebody. The concept I understand, because actually, if you are up to something nefarious, that will probably get you making the sort of mistakes and giving the sort of tells that a police officer will be all over like a rash, and you'll be on the ground and somebody will be landing drone for you. But it's the concept of, if somebody's just checking and they think you may have done something wrong, it takes a couple of minutes to land a drone.
It does. Although, if at that point they're requiring you to land the drone, so they haven't just asked to say, no, you need to land.
Not land it.
Yeah. But to me, the fact that they're not able to, someone's got screen burn, actually, they're going to be suing you for a new monitor. It's something that I feel it should be explained at some point. It should be required to be explained. So it's an interesting one. Obviously, all of this legislation's gone through Parliament. It's gone through public consultation. I think a handful of people responded to the consultation. It was before Geeksvana was highlighting them in such detail. But it was an interesting one for sure. Now, we also had the confirmation again that the police are not there to enforce council policies. So look out for bylaws, PSPOs, etc., that type of thing. And as we know from my previous live stream on the police IAG side of things, that we had the local government document that they've released as well through the Independent Advisory Group, which is there to help local councils get their drone policies right. And actually, one major UK council and a couple of other smaller ones have contacted me directly after that show, who now have those documents and the contact details for people on the IAG should they require more help. So that's work that's come from that MPCC team and the IAG, and I think it's a good thing, isn't it? Really, it can only help.
It is, though. It sounds like a rod for your back, Sean.
Hey,
how many parish councils are there around the country?
Some people choose to make videos that people want to watch and that get tens of thousands of views and hundreds of millions of views. I choose to make videos.
Here we are.
When the police are telling you what to do and not what to do. I feel it's important information. So, make what you're passionate about. But I'm just as happy to watch the other videos. I'm not criticizing anybody else for any other videos. I watch those 100,000 view videos as well on drones. The variety is the spice of life, etc. But yes, I do look at myself in the mirror sometimes and think, you chose this niche.
Really?
You enjoy this? So yes. I think a psychologist would have a field day, but there we go. And of course, the final video, it was nice to get a straight privacy privacy is not a police matter in very, very short terms. And I did title that video drones and your privacy, a police matter ? And there's a quite dramatic thumbnail, because I'm not expecting lots of drone people to want to watch that, but I think when non-drone people are googling it to see what they can do about drones flying near them and that type of thing, I want them to find that and to be able to say, look, there is things you can do, but it's a civil matter, and only if there XYZ crimes are happening. If someone's flying a drone and they're coming down into your garden and watching you in your swimming pool, then that's a crime anyway. Voyeurism is serious and does happen with drones. It will also be good for them to be able to say that actually, it isn't. They're probably not trying to film you, and it's probably something completely different. And initially, it is a civil matter. So I think that's a good thing from that point of view. That it hopefully will be picked up on some of those searches, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've got a good relationship with my neighbours. They all know what I do. And but I'm aware that I fly when I fly my keeping up currency flights, I'll fly down the road and I try and keep it over the sort of pavements and front gardens, not the back gardens, because we don't want to start that.
No, exactly. And everybody has their own little things that they do from that point of view. But again, it's good. We're getting some clarity on some of the minutiae around it. And the full Q&A has some answers on FPV and that side of things, which are, again, really drilling down into the minutiae. But they're important things to know, basically, and get confirmations on. So the problem for me, and hence part of the title with the thumbnail in terms of the problem, throughout the Q&As, live shows and interviews that we've published in our collaboration with the National Police Chiefs Council, is that there's been a continuation of the wider public disconnect with the police in the UK. I think it's safe to say, not the most popular group of working people at the moment. My work with them on these videos and as part of the Police Independent Advisory Group has taught me that at source, the police are aware of the problems and want to address them. So in terms of, just being aware at the top policy making level, they know these problems are happening within the drone space. And as I say, I have seen things actually change, and they've wanted to come on here and they've wanted to connect with the drone community. So they have to be given some credit in terms of engagement and recognizing the issue. But really, I've seen drones come, very far, and I think we're going to see more and more people using them. And in terms of police and understanding it and that type of thing, even the simple things, even officers like the one we watched at Stonehenge that was speaking to another officer on the radio that knew the rules, he was gaining the information he needs and that type of thing. I genuinely think even the confrontational content creators that we see online in standing arguments with police will soon be a thing of the past, because I think the training, the information is all starting to get out there, basically. I just spotted the problem with ads there. So there we go. Managed to kill that. We love that. So all I would ask is that you keep engaging and keep the conversation going. So when you see these videos, the chat, etc., do engage, do have a chat. It has become a success so far, and I like the path that we're on. Now, this is one of the unique things about this relationship as well. There are no views or positions which are unwelcome. We've absolutely no pressure whatsoever from police to moderate comments or silence views. I've never had that. We only apply the usual Geeksvana and YouTube policy to our moderation. That's actually pretty rare, really, in terms of public bodies that are engaging and that type of thing, which of course, most of them don't actually bother engaging full stop. But when they do, it often comes with a rider in terms of how we then interact with comments and that type of thing. Unfortunately, it often means that people just don't end up appearing on the channel. So I think it's something which, the fundamental relationship between officer and drone pilot is still something. And that's a very human thing, isn't it, to solve? Because, of course, an officer could be suspicious and unknowing and make presumptions about a drone flyer as much as anybody could, as much as any member of the public could. And I think that's going to be one of the keys here. It's one of the things that we need to see and that we need to see improve over the coming years, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, and I always go from the basis that with the police, particularly if they're approaching me, it's generally because somebody's reported something to them. I mean, generally speaking, there aren't enough of them around to actually be on the beat and seeing drones in the air. They've had a report, and if you've reported something you're worried about, you expect the police to go along and do something. So they're doing that. They're reacting. They're doing their job. You may not like the fact that it's you on the sort of receiving end, but just be human. Just try and have a pleasant day. Yeah. And then I can guarantee that will shorten the interaction if that's what your aim is. Now,
this is an interesting comment from Ollie P. The highway code is updated once in a blue moon and most drivers still don't keep up to date with it. Constant changes to drone regs will cause apathy and confusion for the public and police. Spot on, Ollie. I agree with this. Interestingly, going through this Q&A process, the only thing that we comment on is legislation, because that is what the police will enforce and what you will be prosecuted under. It isn't under guidance or codes or anything else like that. And I do think at the moment, now they are going through a consultation, but the CAA can also are at fault because they've only just put AMC GM in really more recently into place, and formally accepted it. I don't think it's needed. I don't think the layer of AMC GM is needed because it's caused more confusion than it's helped. And I often see people talk about orientation now, and I've given up drone flying because of the orientation thing. It's actually, did you know, as per our VLOS video on the channel, that's not the law. That's guidance.
Yeah.
And that guidance is based on you automatically being legal when you fly your drone. But actually, the legislation, you can fly further than that. And I do. I do not fly my drone to CAA, AMC, acceptable means of compliance. I have my own acceptable means of compliance based on the legislation, and I fly to that. And I will more than happily stand in court and argue my points should anything ever happen, which is the thing you need to be. If you don't want that, then yes, you do have to fly within the CAA, AMC. Sorry, Graham, I talked over you there.
Well, it's caused just as much angst in the sort of professional area, if we call it that. I'm not going to call it commercial, but the professional operators with operational authorizations, just as much angst there. And I sort of believe it's caused just as much angst within the CAA. The problem is that they're not communicating with us about it. So it's really difficult to explain and get that across.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing, isn't it? I mean, we had the last time we had really sort of, I mean, we do get comms and things from the CAA. People like Jonathan Nicholson, etc., and the comms team are an absolute highly valuable resource in terms of, if you want someone that just wants to give you the honest, wants everybody to have the information. Jonathan Nicholson, comms team, CAA, fantastic. And when Callum came on the channel a couple of Christmases ago now, that showed actually the issue in terms that things like a regulator can have for coming on things like YouTube, because it is different to appearing in the press. There isn't as much control over the interview and the outcomes and things. But that also, as the police have shown, I feel, the few times they've been on here now, you can benefit from that lack of control as well, because as long as you say this is the absolute fact of the situation and you know that to be the fact, the response is the response. Some people don't like the police, some people do like the police, etc., etc. So
it's a conversation. Do you want a conversation or not? If you just want to stand and essentially lay down the regulations and not explain the regulations, just lay them down, then unfortunately you will cause confusion, you will cause apathy, and you will cause resentment, and that's just human nature. But come on, talk to us, guys.
Yeah, no, exactly. Excellent. Okay, well, I have a train to catch. It's a train, isn't it? Yes, I have a train to catch and a continent to chase and some very fun drone flying to go and do, which you'll find out about next week on the channel and onwards from there. Again, keep an eye out. There's going to be some more hints and teases regarding the major announcement on the 30th of August. I will bore you all senseless, but I promise you it is. I mean, Graham, as an insider, is this announcement big enough for me to keep banging on about it?
It is very, very big. It is definitely worth banging on about. And I would ask, if people know the back routes in to talk to me, please don't ask me, because I will not tell you.
No, I was going to say the first part of that is actually how I'd like of the females in my life to describe me. But hey, I'll just leave it there, shall I? But we're going to play the clip again as we leave the show this evening. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. Been a really big crowd in. Thank you for engaging with the police Q&A videos. I really appreciate it. There will be more. We've got some more fun stuff coming next week, including the Mars Ingenuity helicopter and an interview on actually what's happening next and the next set of drones that NASA are taking to space. NASA now love drones. They love drones. Since this a helicopter has done so well, Ingenuity, it has cleared the path, and they are fully invested. And some of the things they're doing with drones is absolutely fascinating. We've got that coming next week. We've also got an interview, another police interview actually, but a different one. An FPV pilot within the UK police showing us how he uses his FPV drones in a range of circumstances, with lots of cool videos to show you as well. Actually, so I'm really looking forward to getting that one out finally. It's been in the edit for a while. So have a wonderful week and weekend. Graham, are you up to anything exciting?
Do you know, I've seeing some friends, going out for a couple of meals with friends.
That sounds lovely. Yeah.
Really, really nice.
Yeah, very good. Excellent. Okay, everybody. So now everyone go and hassle Graham on his DMs about what the announcement is, starting now.